Shock Piece: The Search for Freedom. A novel by C. Nguyen. Chapter 4: The Aftermath. Whispering. The family gathered on the divan again, the males sitting with legs crossed in the yoga posture, the females all on one side, leaning inwards. All were quiet and restrained. A large, square, plain cloth was spread in the middle of the divan for serving meals. Chopsticks and bowls were grouped together in a corner, as mother was not sure of how many were going to eat. It was late afternoon already, and the air was stuffy with heavy stillness. There was no breeze to help clear the atmosphere. The markets were not open, and so the meal was very plain, as there was no fresh meat, fish, or vegetables. A saucepan of thick rice congee was in the midst, with 6 half-opened salted duck eggs, and a dish of radish, pickled in sweet fish sauce. The egg yolks were dark orange in the center, surrounded by creamy white, the only bright color in the whole gloomy picture of the meal. It was almost the same as the food served up in the last few weeks. At first, Trin thought that the depressing atmosphere had dissipated her hunger pangs successfully. But sitting down with the bowl of rice congee in her hands, she realized that she could eat after all. Regardless of the simplicity of the meal, she was indeed ravenous. No one had had any breakfast since dawn, but only the children had any appetite. Juan, Kim, Trin, and Luke ate in silence. Their boisterous nature was subdued by the sad faces of the adults. They did not dare to make any unnecessary noise, apart from the clinking of chopsticks and bowls. Mother's eyes were watery, and her nose was red. Quietly she picked up the corner of her blouse and used the inner side to wipe any droplets of tears from her eyes. Trin noticed her sniffing in long, deep breaths, intermittently, as if to control the flow of emotion. She saw Mother raise her bowl and put it down many times throughout the meal, but it was still very full when Trin had almost finished hers. Mother hardly ate at all. No one dared to speak up. Everyone was whispering as if the walls suddenly had ears, as if eavesdropping was a new practice acquired recently by every citizen in the new communist world. From the moment Saigon had fallen, the whole population of the South started whispering. They were unaware of the loss of their freedom to their own fear. As with the rest of the world at that time, the phobia of communists and communism was extraordinary. It was hidden in an invisible code. The defeat of the Republic of South Vietnam triggered that phobia, and the citizens of Saigon began to cower in terror. The meaning of human rights and freedom was swiftly taken away. In the lives of the Southerners, those became extravagant words in their vocabularies and replaced slowly by suspicion, horror, panic, and despair. They did not dare to congregate in public. A crowd of more than 3 or 4 was considered dangerous and might be accused of conspiring to rebel. And chances were that they would be put in detention without further explanation. They talked in low, quiet tones, inside their closed doors with only trusted members of their family or friends. They looked at each other and searched for signs of betrayal. Their careful use of words when talking to strangers was distressing. Any misunderstanding and misinterpretation might be followed by disastrous results. I hope President Nguyen Van Minh is okay. He's so unlucky to be dragged into the mess in the last minutes like this. Father started the conversation, keeping his voice low. He's so naive to think that he could negotiate with the communists. But why surrender so quickly, Father? Mac continued. Mac was Yang's husband. Of the 7 children in the family, only Yang had been married a year before the war ended. They were staying in a separate part of the house with a rear entrance, which had recently been renovated into a fully self-contained modern apartment. Of course, they want him to believe so, He was the last means they had of trying to stall the advancement. However, the speed of the Viet Cong approach was so fast that it did not help. He was forced to surrender unconditionally. Why surrender without any effort to fight at all? Mac was still dissatisfied with the answers and kept insisting. No one was willing to hold the fort anymore, Mac. Didn't you see the top-notch leaders were leaving weeks before? Yes, I know. The whole population was prepared to leave if there was a chance. Mac shook his head sorrowfully. What are we going to do now? Yang followed her husband's line of questioning. What can we do? Father sighed. We'll have to wait to see what's going to happen. And then we'll try to conform, dear. They're going to take action soon. In the meantime, we need to get back to our daily routine. Try to regain our normality, make the most of our time, and be calm. At least we're alive now. Father shook his head, trying to escape from his reverie. Mother looked at Father. There was a meaningful exchange between them. Only at dawn the day before, he had discussed with her briefly how he might have to make a decisive move if the situation came to an unfavorable end. He had called a meeting with Betty, his oldest daughter from a previous marriage, Yang and Mac, and his wife in the lounge when the fighting was closing in. The children were still asleep. It was still very dark when Nguyen got up that morning. While waiting for the rest to arrive, he went to the large, heavy combination safe, occupying a permanent corner in the room, and took out a small pistol. He put it on the coffee table, then beckoned them to sit down on the floor. The women were huddled together, squatting in a group and eyeing the pistol timidly. Max sat next to his wife, his face showing lines of anxiety. He was curious about his father-in-law's request for a meeting at this early hour. I know I told everyone to stay calm and remain in the country for the last few weeks. Nguyen began. I believed that the war was coming to an end and Vietnam was gaining peace after all, and I'd like to live and die here in my homeland. My oldest son had fought and died for this war, and at long last, peace is approaching. It's my sincere wish to stay. However, there are moments now that I'm doubtful of the communists, and I'm afraid of their vengeance toward ex-government officials, intellectuals, soldiers and their families, and whoever they think of as their enemies. I could not sleep last night because the doubts became more and more profound. I thought of the killings in the 1968 Tet offensive in Hue, and in the darkest corner of my feeble mind, I was afraid. That's why I asked you to come and listen to me this morning. He looked at them squarely in the eyes. They all started to talk at once after this last sentence, but he motioned for them to be quiet, and then he picked up the pistol and showed it to them. This only has a few bullets in it, but there are more in the safe. I'd thought of this solution only if the VC bastards were going to show cruelty or do anything to harm anyone, or anything that I foresee as a threat to any of you. Then I'll use it to shoot each one of us before letting us suffer in their barbaric hands. He spoke in long sentences without a pause, as if stopping would prevent him from finishing what he had to say. Nguyen breathed deeply to regain his composure. Mother was shocked to hear his statement. Everyone else was stunned and speechless. But no, it's so frightful, she stammered. Yes, dear G. Nguyen nodded his head and looked at his wife of 25 years. I know it's outrageous to think of that last solution, but I cannot let myself witness the brutality the Viet Cong might treat us with, even though I truly hope that the bastards will not do anything, considering I'm just an old retiree and useless. But as the days and hours are drawing closer, the fear begins to surface, and I'm afraid I might have made a bad decision in letting us all stay back. No, it's impossible. Oh, dear, Buddha, help us, please. Ji continued her stammering and then started to cry openly, drowning in her sorrow and panic. Yes, I'm praying for the help of the Almighty as well, Nguyen whispered. Father, please, don't be too pessimistic. They're our own people. They're Vietnamese, and they speak the same language as we do. I don't think they can be as barbaric as we thought they were. Betty was in shock at Father's dreadful plan, and she tried to convince him with her own optimism. Yes, Father, Yang added, we must remain calm. We will go along with the rest of the country. They could not possibly kill all the Southerners. It's absurd that they could be that bloodthirsty. Don't be too alarmed, Father. We're citizens of the South, Mac continued. This is still our homeland. We're staying back, so we're already accepting our defeat and appearing to be willing to cooperate with them, Father. They could not do more harm to us, could they? I hope not, Mac, Father sighed. Besides, I'm afraid you might not have the courage to pull the trigger too many times, Father. There are too many of us, Betty reasoned. The last phrase was broken up, as Betty was overwhelmed with emotion. Betty is right, Father, Yang pleaded. You could not finish us all. And she stopped in mid-sentence. She was appalled at the horrific image and started crying with the rest. Don't worry too much, Father. You've made the right decision to tell us to stay back. And we're going to enjoy peace in our country with you and the rest of the population of the South. There's nothing to be afraid of. Mac remained calm and spoke slowly, enunciating each word. He was trying to convince the group and himself, apparently. Nguyen looked up. The morning sun was beginning to show its first ray of light through the front door. Floating freely within its realm were tiny dust particles dancing animatedly in total silence. He turned and gazed into the weary faces of his beloved wife, daughters, and his son-in-law for a long moment, then walked to the corner of the room where the safe was. Then he reassured them. No, I won't do anything. I'm sorry that I brought it up. We'll be okay. Let's forget this dreadful discussion. He put the pistol back and closed the heavy door. Later that night, Nguyen walked out as far as he dared from the house and disposed of the gun and the rest of the bullets in the sewage waste, the night before the fall of Saigon. In hindsight, through many sleepless nights, Nguyen realized that the weakness of the South Vietnamese people was their own naivete. The majority of the southern population could not imagine the northern Vietnamese communists could be so barbaric and cruel. He thought most of the stories relating to that barbarism and cruelty from other northerners who escaped in the 1954 Exodus or in the Tet Offensive in 1968 were mere disinformation. The horrific treatment inflicted on one human being by another of the same blood and ancestors could not be that horrifying. He could not possibly believe the hatred and revenge their own people, with the same mother tongue, could have imposed upon the people of the South. The blind animosity and fierce malevolence of the Vietnamese communists toward capitalists, landlords, and foreigners had developed slowly and effectively. It was the extensive and continuous brainwashing propaganda of Ho Chi Minh and his followers for over 20 years during the Civil War. Bitterly, that malevolence was also the driving force behind the single-minded advancement of the communists towards the South. The communists had won this war through gaining the trust and devotion of their people to fight for the land that they thought needed to be liberated. Little had he known that that concept, based on hatred, led to much mistreatment and cruelty of the defeated citizens of the South, and that it had gone on for more than another decade after the war ended.